I stood in the kitchen, my hands trembling as I clutched Mark's phone. The screen glowed with damning evidence of his betrayal. Emails, texts, photos, a digital trail of lies that stretched back years. Lisa? What are you doing with my phone? Mark's voice startled me. I hadn't heard him come in. I turned to face him, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark, you think I wouldn't find out? You've been lying to me for years. His face drained of color. I can explain. Explain what? The late nights at the office? The business trips? My voice rose with each question. Or should we talk about Vanessa? Mark's eyes widened at the mention of her name. He reached for the phone, but I pulled it away. Lisa, please. It's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Really? Because I think it's exactly what I think. How long, Mark? How long have you been sleeping with her? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Now it just made my stomach churn. It just happened. We never meant for it to dash. To what? To hurt me? To destroy our family. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't care. Well, congratulations. You've done both. The front door opened and Eva's voice called out, Mom? Dad? I'm home. Mark's eyes darted to the hallway, panic written across his face. Lisa, please. Not now. Not in front of Eva. I wiped my eyes, straightening my shoulders. You're right. She doesn't deserve to see this. But don't think for a second this is over. As Eva's footsteps approached, I plastered on a smile and tucked the phone into my pocket. My daughter didn't need to know her father was a lying cheat. Not yet anyway. But as I hugged Eva and listened to her chatter about her day, my mind was already racing. I needed proof, more than just what I'd found on Mark's phone. And I knew exactly who to call. Grace would know what to do. She'd help me figure out how to protect myself and Eva. And then? Then Mark would learn what it meant to betray the wrong woman. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts of revenge. I opened the door to find Helen, my mother-in-law, standing there with a concerned look on her face. Lisa, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, stepping inside. Not at all, Helen. What brings you by? She sighed, settling onto the couch. I'm worried about Mark. He's been so distant lately. Is everything all right between you two? I felt my throat tighten. Should I tell her? The weight of Mark's betrayal pressed down on me, but I couldn't bring myself to shatter her image of her son. Not yet. We've been going through some things, I said carefully. Helen's eyes narrowed. Lisa, I've known you for over 20 years. I can tell when something's wrong. Mark's barely been home, always with those business trips and late nights at the office. It's not right leaving you and Eva alone so much. I couldn't help but flinch at the mention of his excuses. Helen noticed, of course. What is it? What has he done? Before I could answer, Eva burst through the front door, her face flushed with excitement. Mom, I got the job. I forced a smile, pushing aside my turmoil. That's wonderful, sweetie. I'm so proud of you. As Eva chattered about her new position, I caught Helen watching me intently. When Eva finally excused herself to call her friends, Helen leaned in close. Lisa, whatever's going on, you need to take a stand. Don't let Mark walk all over you. You're stronger than that. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. If only she knew how right she was. I know, Helen. And I will. I promise. After Helen left, I sat alone in the living room, her advice echoing in my mind. She was right. I couldn't let Mark get away with this. But I needed more than just the evidence on his phone. I needed to catch him red-handed. My phone buzzed with a text from Grace. Found something. Call me ASAP. My heart raced as I dialed her number. Whatever Grace had discovered, I knew it would be the key to exposing Mark's lies once and for all. And this time I wouldn't back down. As the phone rang, I steeled myself for what was to come. Mark had no idea what he was in for. And neither did Vanessa. I sat in my car, heart pounding, as I watched Mark enter the upscale hotel. This was it, the business trip Grace had uncovered. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, waiting. 10 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up. A woman stepped out, her high heels clicking on the pavement. Vanessa. My stomach churned as I watched her saunter into the hotel, oblivious to my presence. I gave them a few minutes, then followed. The lobby was bustling, but I spotted them easily, heading towards the elevators. Without thinking, I called out, "Mark." He froze, turning slowly. His face paled when he saw me. "Lisa? What are you doing here?" I marched up to them, fury propelling me forward. "I could ask you the same thing. This doesn't look like a business meeting to me." Vanessa stepped forward, her lips curled in a smirk. "Oh honey, did you really think he was working late all those nights?" My hand connected with her face before I even realized I'd moved. The sharp crack echoed through the lobby, drawing startled gasps from onlookers. "Lisa!" Mark grabbed my arm. "What the hell are you doing?" I yanked away from him. "What am I doing? What are you doing, Mark? How long has this been going on?" He glanced around nervously. "This isn't the place." "No," I cut him off. "You don't get to decide that anymore." "How long?" Vanessa rubbed her cheek, glaring at me. 3 years, if you must know. Maybe if you'd been a better wife." "Shut up," Mark hissed at her. He turned to me, his voice low. "Lisa, please. Let's talk about this at home." I laughed bitterly. "Home? You mean the home you've been lying to me in for years?" "No, we're done talking, Mark. I want a divorce." The word hung in the air between us. Mark's face crumpled. "You don't mean that. We can work this out." "There's nothing to work out," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's over." As I turned to leave, Vanessa called out, "He'll never let you go, you know. You're nothing without him." I paused, looking back at them. Mark, defeated and small. Vanessa, smug and cruel. In that moment, I knew I was stronger than both of them combined. "Watch me," I said, and walked out of the hotel with my head held high. In the car, my hands shook as I called Grace. "It's done," I told her. I confronted them. "Oh, Lisa," she breathed. "Are you okay? What happened?" I took a deep breath, realizing I felt lighter than I had in years. "I'm better than okay. I'm free." As I drove home, I knew the hard part was just beginning. Telling Eva, dealing with the fallout, rebuilding my life. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Mark and Vanessa had no idea what was coming next. I stood outside Helen and George's house, my hand frozen mid-knock. How could I tell them their son was a cheating liar? But I needed their support, and they deserved the truth. Before I could decide, the door swung open. Helen's smile faded as she saw my face. "Lisa? What's wrong?" I broke down, sobbing in her arms. She ushered me inside, where George sat in his armchair, concern etched on his kind face. "It's Mark," I choked out. He's been having an affair." The silence was deafening. Helen's grip on my hand tightened, while George's face crumpled in disbelief. "How long?" Helen's voice was barely a whisper. 3 years, I replied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. George stood abruptly, pacing the room. "I can't believe it. Our son, how could he do this?" Helen's shock quickly turned to anger. "That selfish, irresponsible boy. I knew something was wrong, but this." She turned to me, her eyes blazing. "Lisa, you listen to me. You do not let him get away with this. You hear me?" I nodded, drawing strength from her fury. "I won't. I've already told him I want a divorce." George stopped pacing, his face pale. "A divorce? Are you sure that's—" "George." Helen cut him off. "Don't you dare suggest she stay with that cheating." Suddenly, we heard a gasp from the doorway. Eva stood there, her eyes wide with shock and brimming with tears. Dad cheated on you." Her voice broke, and my heart shattered all over again. I reached for her, but she backed away. "Eva, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this." "How long have you known?" she demanded, anger replacing her initial shock. "I just found out recently. I swear." I pleaded. "I was going to tell you, but I wanted to be sure first." Eva's face hardened. "And now you're getting a divorce? Just like that? You're tearing our family apart." "Eva, your father tore this family apart when he decided to cheat," Helen interjected firmly. But Eva wasn't listening. She turned and ran out of the house, ignoring my calls. I moved to follow her, but George gently held me back. "Give her time, Lisa. It's a lot to process." I sank onto the couch, feeling more lost than ever. Helen sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "We're here for you, Lisa," she said softly. "Whatever you need." I looked at them both, these people who had been my family for so long. Despite everything, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," I whispered. I think I'm going to need all the support I can get." As I left their house later, my phone buzzed with a message from Grace. "Plan in motion. Ready when you are." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. It was time to take control of my life, no matter the cost. Grace and I huddled over her laptop, pouring through the evidence we'd gathered. Emails, bank statements, hotel receipts, a digital trail of Mark's betrayal. "This is it, Lisa," Grace said, her eyes gleaming. "We've got everything we need to expose them at the family reunion next week." I nodded, a mix of anticipation and dread churning in my stomach. "Are you sure this is the right move? It's so public." Grace squeezed my hand. "He humiliated you. It's time he faced the consequences." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Eva. My heart leapt. She hadn't spoken to me since overhearing the truth about Mark. "Mom," her voice was small, fragile. "Can we talk?" 20 minutes later, we sat in a quiet cafe. Eva's eyes were red-rimmed, her fingers twisting nervously around her cup. "I'm sorry I ran out," she began. "It was just a lot." I reached across the table, relieved when she didn't pull away. "I know, sweetie. I'm sorry you had to find out like that." She took a shaky breath. "Dad called me. He wants me to convince you to give him another chance." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I needed time to think," Eva said, her voice hardening. "But Mom, there's something else. Vanessa, she's pregnant." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the table, feeling like I might be sick. How do you know?" "Dad told me," Eva whispered. "He says it was a mistake, that he wants to make things right with us. But he also said—" She hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. "He said he has obligations to Vanessa now." Rage and heartbreak warred within me.
How dare he?
How dare he use our daughter as a pawn in a sick game? "Eva," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "your father made his choice. Multiple times. He doesn't get to manipulate us now." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I don't know how to feel about any of this." I squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out together, okay? I promise." As Eva left, my phone buzzed again. A text from Grace. "Everything's set for the reunion. Are you ready?" I stared at the message, my mind reeling. Mark's betrayal, Vanessa's pregnancy, Eva's pain. It all swirled together, hardening my resolve. My fingers flew across the screen. Change of plans. "We're doing this now." It was time to take control of my narrative. Mark thought he could manipulate me, use our daughter against me? He had no idea what was coming. As I dialed Grace's number, a calm settled over me. No more waiting. No more being the victim of Mark's choices. It was time to write my own ending to this story. My hands shook as I stood before the gathered family, Grace by my side. Mark sat at the far end of the table, oblivious to the storm about to break. "I have something to say," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "And I have proof to back it up." All eyes turned to me. Helen nodded encouragingly, while George looked concerned. Eva, seated between her grandparents, gripped the edge of the table. I took a deep breath and pressed play on the laptop. Mark's voice filled the room, intertwined with Vanessa's. Their intimate conversation left no doubt about their relationship. Gasps echoed around the table. Mark's face drained of color. "Lisa, what are you doing?" "Telling the truth," I replied, my voice ice cold. "Something you should have done years ago." I laid out the evidence. Emails, hotel receipts, bank statements. With each revelation, Mark seemed to shrink in his chair. 3 years, I said, looking directly at him. 3 years of lies, Mark. And now a baby? The room erupted in chaos. Helen's face contorted with fury, while George looked like he might be sick. Eva buried her face in her hands. Mark stood, desperation in his eyes. "Lisa, please. We can work this out." I'll end things with Vanessa, I swear. I laughed bitterly. End things? She's pregnant, Mark. Or was that a lie too? His silence was damning. Murmurs of disgust rippled through the family. I want a divorce, I declared, my voice ringing clear. I won't live in the shadow of your betrayal anymore. Mark lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You can't do this. You're nothing without me, Lisa. Who do you think you are? Before I could react, Eva was between us, her eyes blazing. Let go of her, she hissed. You don't get to touch her ever again. Mark recoiled as if slapped. The room fell silent, all eyes on Eva. I'm done with you, she continued, her voice shaking. Both of you. Mom's right, this ends now. As Mark stammered excuses, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I dreaded this moment for so long, but now, surrounded by the truth and the support of my family, I felt stronger than ever. Grace squeezed my hand, and I knew the hardest part was over. Whatever came next, I wouldn't face it alone. But as I looked at Mark's defeated form and the shattered remains of our family, I couldn't help but wonder, at what cost did this victory come? And where do we go from here? The days following the family confrontation were a whirlwind. I moved out of our shared home, taking Eva with me. We found solace in a small apartment, surrounded by boxes of our hastily packed lives. Mark's desperate calls and messages went unanswered. I was done with his lies, his manipulations. But the peace I'd hoped for remained elusive. One morning, as I sipped coffee in our new kitchen, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered cautiously. Is this Lisa? A woman's voice, familiar yet unexpected. Vanessa? My grip tightened on the phone. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. Please. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a local cafe. As I walked in, I saw her, pale, drawn, a shadow of the confident woman I'd confronted weeks ago. I lost the baby, she blurted out as I sat down. It was never real. I lied to Mark to keep him. The world tilted on its axis. What? Tears streamed down her face. I thought if he believed I was pregnant, he'd leave you. But after what happened at the family dinner, I couldn't keep lying. Anger and pity warred within me. Do you have any idea what you've done? The lives you've destroyed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to go this far. As I left the cafe, my mind reeling, I bumped into someone, Mark. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothes disheveled. Lisa, please, he begged. I know I don't deserve it, but please just listen to me. Before I could respond, Eva appeared, her face hardening at the sight of her father. Mom, what's going on? The three of us stood there, a tableau of broken trust and shattered dreams. Mark, reaching out desperately. Eva, her eyes flicking between us, confusion and anger warring on her face. And me, caught in the middle, the weight of everyone's pain pressing down on me. In that moment, I realized the true cost of my revenge. Yes, I'd exposed Mark's lies, but at what price? Our family lay in ruins, and the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever. As Mark began to speak, undoubtedly ready to unleash a torrent of explanations and apologies, I held up my hand. Not here, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Not now. I turned to Eva, seeing the hurt and confusion in her eyes. Let's go home, sweetie. We have a lot to talk about. As we walked away, leaving Mark standing alone on the sidewalk, I felt a strange mix of emptiness and resolve. The life I'd known was gone, shattered beyond repair. But as I squeezed Eva's hand, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was ours to choose. 6 months after the confrontation that shattered our family, I stood in the kitchen of my new home, surrounded by the warm aroma of baking lasagna. Eva bustled around, setting the table, while Helen arranged flowers in a vase. The doorbell rang, and my heart skipped a beat. George entered, his kind eyes crinkling as he hugged me. Smells wonderful, Lisa, he said, squeezing my hand. As we settled around the table, I couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed. The pain of Mark's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer defined me. I'd found strength I never knew I had. Mom, Eva said, her eyes shining, I got the promotion. Cheers erupted around the table. My daughter, once so dependent, now thrived in her career. I felt a surge of pride. Helen raised her glass. To new beginnings, she said, her voice thick with emotion. And to the strength of family, the ones we're born with and the ones we choose. As we clinked glasses, I thought of Grace, who'd been my rock through it all. Of the therapist who'd helped me navigate my anger and grief. Of the part-time job at the community center that had given me a sense of purpose. The conversation flowed, punctuated by laughter and the occasional tear. We spoke of the past, but more importantly, of the future. Helen and George shared plans for their upcoming cruise. Eva excitedly described her new project at work. As I looked around at these faces, my true family, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The road hadn't been easy. There had been days when the weight of it all seemed unbearable. Moments when I questioned every decision. But sitting here, in this home filled with love and hope, I knew I'd made the right choice. I'd faced my fears, stood up for myself, and emerged stronger for it. You know, I said as the conversation lulled, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for what happened. Surprised looks met my statement. Not for the pain, I clarified, but for the growth. For the chance to rediscover myself. To build something real and honest. Eva reached over, squeezing my hand. We're grateful too, Mom. For you. As the evening wound down, I stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues. The future stretched before me, full of possibilities I'd never dared to imagine before. I took a deep breath, savoring the moment. This was my new beginning, hard won and precious. And I was ready to embrace every moment of it.